Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rock star. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant and trainer, David Giller.
Hello and welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope you are all doing well. I am super excited for today's live show because I am joined by none other than David Carnes. David, go ahead and introduce yourself for folks who don't know you.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be on the show with you today, David. So my name is David Carnes. I'm the chairman and chief evangelist of OpFocus. We're a consulting shop. We're about 55 people. We operate throughout the US and Canada. We work with SaaS companies to optimize their revenue operations. I've been very active in the community for probably 16 years. Love the fact that we have over 1,000 user groups worldwide. Been a Salesforce MVP, honored to be an MVP this year. It's really been special. A lot of really nice doors have opened because of that. Twice a month, I host a group called Dashboard Dojo, and we have a great time digging into report and dashboard functionality within Salesforce, trying to get the most out of the core features that are offered to us.
Amazing. Thank you, David. And today we're going to be covering two incredibly important, very different, but two incredibly important topics. The first one is all about mentorship and how mentorship can help you accelerate, honestly, your career regardless of the niche industry, regardless of geographic location, regardless of whether you are the mentor or the mentee, and some powered tips on reports and dashboards in Salesforce. So for those who have not joined this live weekly show before, let me just explain the sequence of events here. So as you can see lower down on the screen, we've got three different segments here. So we've got the strategy, that's sort of like what I sometimes refer to as the talking head segment. So for about 20 minutes, today we're going to be focusing on, David's going to be sharing best practices regarding mentorship and how you can get involved in mentorship and how mentorship can help you for your own career. Then we have the second segment, which is the show me segment, where David is going to show some tips and best practices and some beta features associated with Salesforce reports and dashboards. And by the way, I mentioned this to David when we were not live. Pretty much every single time I see David presenting on reports or dashboards, I learn something new myself. So I'm looking forward to it. And then the last segment that we have all the way over there on the side, open Q&A, is answering any questions that any of you might have. It might be on some of the topics that we talked about today. It might be on something completely different, something totally unrelated, so long as it's related to Salesforce. It could be something totally unrelated to anything that we're talking about today. So without further ado, let me get us kicked off on the first segment, which is strategy. We're going to be talking about mentorship. All right, David, this is all you. Take it away.
Oh, sure. And what a fantastic topic. And it's really a lifetime topic. I've realized as the years have rolled by. I think, we're really blessed within the Salesforce community that there are so many people that are willing to share their experiences, sort of nestled into different phases of our careers. And Salesforce has, probably many of you know, has formalized a mentorship program, and those are in month-long chunks. So I'll talk about that in a bit. But I do want to take it up a level. I love that you fit this into a strategy component of today's show, and almost like around life strategy. I turned 50 earlier this year. I'm probably a little further along in my career than some other folks. I have benefited from mentors all along the way. And, just to share a little bit about my past, my first job out of college was over in Japan. And I saw up close this concept of senpai kohai. And senpai kohai is it's just ingrained in Japanese culture that the people who are further along in whatever it is, and they could be, if you're playing a varsity sport, it'd be the people that are, the next year above or more senior in that, whatever that thing is, could be flower arrangement. It doesn't really matter. There's this concept of senpai kohai. And what's so great about it is that there are expectations for both of the roles. So for somebody who's senpai, a little bit older, typically might be older or more senior in whatever that organization is, and the Kohai being a little bit more junior, there are expectations about what somebody might do in that more senior role to help somebody who's more junior move along. So I love that as a like sort of a microcosm, and seeing that early in my career. I definitely have benefited from so many generous people all along the way. And a few of these people now have become lifelong friends. And I'm talking about mentors of mine. When Salesforce introduced their mentorship program, I remember that there was a gap of, we were missing about 1,000 mentors. There were more than 1,000 people signed up as mentees seeking mentors, and we were really short on mentors. And it really made me think to propose this idea that everyone, even if you're 3 years into your career or you're 1 year into Salesforce, actually to raise their hand, really to try to encourage as many people as possible to mentor others and have that joy from that experience. Like, it is such a wonderful experience to sort of forget about everything that's part of your world, your ego, your objectives, and actually just wholeheartedly focus on somebody else's objectives for a little bit. And, sometimes all it takes is one little obstacle removed or one new idea to help somebody think about something a different way. I think the biggest thing that I've seen with mentoring has been my mentors always encouraging me to think bigger. And I've sort of embraced that as something for myself. Just really, anytime I talk with somebody, just trying to inject bigger thoughts. And the pyramid started off as a thought. I remember going to the Hermitage in St. Petersburg in Russia. That's one very, very large building, very, very large art collection, and thinking that started as somebody's idea. And it took thousands of serf labor, essentially slaves, to build the pyramids. But I guess I'm not trying to go down that path, but just the idea that, people thinking big thoughts is where a lot of great things happen. And so, woven into that topic on mentors and mentorship, it's been the mentors that have often been the ones to plant a big seed. I remember early in my business, somebody who I'm still very close with saying, I know this other person has $1 million consulting business. And at the time, I hadn't even thought of $1 million for the consulting business. Now we've got a team of 55 and, operating in a few countries. And, there's a lot more complexity than that. But I wonder if it would have taken me a lot longer to get above the $1 million revenue threshold if a mentor hadn't planted the idea. So, bringing it down a couple of levels, I think as a society, we really haven't formalized mentoring in a way that I think we should. Just setting expectations that it doesn't have to be onerous on the mentor. It doesn't have to take a tremendous amount of time. I've found in my own experience that it's just such a delightful thing to do and so rewarding to just play a small role in somebody else's life and maybe reframe a few things, help remove a few obstacles. Even talking through something as simple as a resume, helping somebody reposition that to help them with their job search. So I kind of wish that we could come up with a structure for society, but in the short term, within the Salesforce Ohana, we really have this great opportunity with the Trailblazer Mentorship Program, and we're always in need of more mentors. What Salesforce has done in such a nice way is they've established a program that is it's sort of bound by a month, and within the month you're expected to have 3 or 4 sessions with a mentee, and they try to do their best to pair someone who might be 3 years in their career with somebody who's 1 year in their career, or somebody who's 10 years with somebody who's 6 years, and just try to take advantage of that senpai kohai thing that I mentioned earlier, just somebody who's a little further along. And I think one of the gaps that we have in society is that we sort of think, oh, when I become a VP, that's when I'll start mentoring, because that I'll have so much more experience to share. But I'd love to press the point that the road to MVP is through mentoring, and the way that people become great managers is actually to be great mentors first, and just giving people feedback and trying to encourage them to take steps that they might not have taken before. David, I'd be curious, do you have any mentor stories, any folks in your life that have been meaningful?
Yes. So first of all, as the mentee, I can tell you that early on in several different careers, because as you know, as most of you know, I was once a practicing attorney. So as a practicing attorney, I've had people who really just took it upon themselves. I didn't even proactively ask them, and they decided that they were going to mentor me. And I was so completely appreciative for the guidance, for the real world advice that they were able to offer me. They were basically the equivalent of having a GPS when I didn't even realize how lost I was, let
Yes, yes,
alone,
yes.
yeah, let alone when I first came into the world of IT. And this is really when I started working for GE. I was at NBC at the time in the IT department. I had not one, but several mentors. One was my manager for sure. By the way, just because someone's your manager does not mean that they are your mentor. You can have a manager who simply delegates work and expects you to talk to them when you're done with it, and that's about it. But my manager, my initial manager, I should clarify, I had several managers when I was at NBC. Not all of them were that great, but my initial manager was a magnificent mentor who was a mentor for me for most of my 16 plus years at GE. And she really showed me not only how to navigate around the GE world, but to understand about business requirements gathering and how to manage technology projects and how to talk to senior leaders. And I learned, in many ways, I learned the whole world about everything that I do today. And I sort of take it for granted. I learned from her. As a mentor, for me as a mentor, I have many people who reach out to me on a regular basis throughout the Salesforce community that I try to help in some way. I might not necessarily have the level of time that I would love to dedicate to help them, but it's incredibly rewarding for me to be able to sort of like pay it forward, help them avoid some pitfalls, some of the obstacles that they're currently faced with by just giving them the appropriate advice and re-guiding them, similar to the GPS analogy that I mentioned earlier, rerouting them to the appropriate path that they really need to take for them and for what they are looking to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so great. Tim in the session made a comment saying, I'm mentoring with super moms and enjoying it, was hesitant, not thinking I could help, but quickly find out I was wrong. And Tim, I'm so glad that you shared that. Oh, that's cool. Nice to see that
Yeah,
on the
I'll
screen.
putting it all the way on the top, not to
Okay,
conflict
great.
with anything else that we have here.
And I think a lot of people have that experience. I host, we call them RevOps roundtables, and I host 4 of them a month and have different folks at different levels in their organizations participate. And one of the groups, just about everybody signed up to be a mentor, and then people are just loving it, loving that experience, and maybe that inspires them to go down a managerial path. I think what a lot of people, especially with the Salesforce mentor program, they sort of worry that they'll be paired with someone who has more technical chops than they are. So you're a mentor and being paired with somebody who just has what, but the reality is, I think it's as much about the soft skills. It's about having a conversation around somebody's goals, and specifically within the Salesforce mentor program, the Trailblazer mentor program. One person I met with, or was paired with, was very, very interested in just talking about admin stuff, and it was kind of fun. We were in setup and looking at things, and she was a solo admin and really wanted to talk about stuff, whereas some of the others have been much more focused on career paths, career next steps, just deciding, looking for guidance on, which path to go down, or how to think about where they are in their career.
And also, let's face it, the world of Salesforce, both from a technology perspective, from a career perspective, and even the Salesforce community as a whole, can be overwhelming, to say the least. It means a lot of different things, and you can take very different paths to become familiar with all of the options available, let alone how to create the path that's appropriate for each person based on their skill set, their level of interest, their niche industry. It's really overwhelming. So everyone really needs some level of guidance to come from somewhere.
Yeah, and I do think that it's a learning experience to mentor other people. And I when I've talked to people that are, let's say 3 to 20 years into their careers, when I ask about their mentors, I'll also ask about their mentoring experience, and almost as an expectation that they be passing it forward to others. But I think probably I've learned more about myself mentoring others and sort of talking through issues with folks. But so I'm all for it. It doesn't, could be related within the Salesforce community, which is so strong and just so fantastic. If you haven't heard me say this before, the Ohana is real. In speaking at events around the world, like I couldn't be more jazzed. Like, meeting a group in France or meeting a group in the UK or in Australia or wherever. I spoke to a group earlier this year in Uruguay and in Pakistan. The Ohana is absolutely real worldwide, which I think really lends itself well to positive mentoring and mentoring experiences.
Absolutely. I love it. So for folks who are looking to get involved in a mentorship, I provided the link, or get involved either as a mentor or as a mentee. I gave the link in the chat I should actually pin it so everyone can find it easily. I gave the link to the Trailhead Mentorship Program. There we go. Just pinned it now. So you should all be able to see it easily in the chat on YouTube. What other tips or advice do we want to share?
Yeah, I had a fun experience this summer actually working on a Trailhead badge on being a good mentor. So there was one before about being a good mentee, and this one was on being a mentor. And I think they're both, there's so many excellent Trailhead badges. It's been really fun to watch the level of writing evolve over the years, and just such interesting, rich content. But specifically around mentoring, there's some really nice blocking and tackling. I think a few people have put in the comments about unofficial mentors. And, there isn't always a level of formality. I think with one of my longest term mentors, I'll text and I'll reach out and we'll have a chat sort of informally. And I'll try to head out to Seattle once a year to spend time with him, just to spend some face-to-face time. And it's that meaningful. And I'd like for us to know each other the rest of our lives. Whatever the format is, if you are entering in something a little more formal, a suggestion I would have is that it's very helpful, like David mentioned about the time commitment for being a mentor. It's very helpful if the mentee shoulders, scheduling a next time, if that's sort of how the framework works. And also if a mentee maybe keeps track of what deliverables might be, what they've agreed to, try to work on between sessions, and then report out on those things. It's sort of helpful, especially if your mentor mentors multiple people.
Absolutely. And would you suggest that a mentee, if a mentee were to initiate approaching someone as a potential mentor, what would you suggest as the best approach to take to even start that conversation without intimidating, without asking that person to overcommit to something? What would be the best way to approach that?
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful to put some kind of a framework around. If you're not clear with what your goals are, it'll feel very open-ended and heavy to somebody who may be very busy, sort of doing whatever they're doing in their lives. But if you were to start with something like, it would be very helpful to me to meet with somebody like yourself and talk through, and perhaps if we were able to meet for coffee 3 times or meet online 3 times and talk through these topics. Not everyone has been a mentor before. There are some people who would be fabulous mentors, and they just haven't been encouraged to be mentors. But I would probably put some kind of a frame around it. And I think this is what has helped Salesforce, the Trailblazer Mentorship Program, by saying this is a 1-month commitment. We're asking for 1 month, 4 sessions. They tend to be half an hour or an hour long. And Salesforce is giving guidance to both the mentee and the mentor to help move things along. And just as a framework for possibly being a mentor for the rest of your life, this is a great way to practice that. I cannot say enough good things about how rewarding it is to spend time with others and help them on their journey.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, are we ready to move over into the second segment, talk about
Sure,
reports?
absolutely.
Beautiful. Hang on.
And
Sorry. It's all right. You wanted to address something that
I
Tim...
just in the comments, Tim mentioned that Supermoms is also looking for mentors. What a fantastic program that is! Wholeheartedly support that. Mitch asked a question about RevOps, and so revenue operations is the combination of marketing operations, sales enablement, and customer success operations. So four disciplines into one. I host a few roundtables every month, just getting together. They're mostly people from SaaS companies, but to Mitch's question about RevOps, and Mitch, I can follow up with you separately on that if that's helpful.
Beautiful. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about reports and dashboards in
Okay,
Salesforce.
cool. Well, I love to just be able to riff on reports and dashboard stuff. So this is fun. One of the first things that I want people to know about reports and dashboards is if you do not give your users permission to use these features, they literally may be, it's like working with one hand tied behind their back. And an example in Lightning is that users cannot subscribe to dashboards unless an admin goes and gives them permissions to. So the standard user profile in Salesforce does not allow people to subscribe to dashboards. Well, there are about 30 permissions related to reports and dashboards. I wrote a blog article on this topic a couple of years back. I created a bit.ly link. It's just bit.ly/report_permissions, and it just goes right to this. But in this, I basically say, look, it doesn't matter if you have 20 people or 20,000 users in your system. You have end users, you have managers, you have super users, you have admins, like report and dashboard admins, and then you probably have sysadmins. Well, among those 30 permissions, I would recommend at a minimum handing these out. If people on your team are creating dashboards, they won't be able to set the dashboard color palette unless you give them permission. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. So again, it's just bit.ly/report_permissions, and you can find that. Just thought to mention that. And one of the things in here, I guess it's not on this one, but settings is another thing to keep your eye on. So under setup, an admin can go under setup, expand. And David, you can see the screen fine?
Yes, we can
Great.
see that.
Okay. So under setup, you can go to feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, and then report and dashboard settings. Two of the things that I thought to show today are beta features. So these are features that are live, but you have to essentially turn them on. And this has been true the last couple of years since Salesforce moved to Lightning. Pretty much every release or every other release, there's been a beta feature that you need to turn it on to take advantage of it. One of them that I really, really like and I'm excited about is this inline editing and reports. So people have wanted this one for years.
Myself included, by the way. I've been asking for it for a long time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's super exciting. And then another one that's come out that's interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing where else it goes, is dynamic gauge charts. So when looking at gas gauges, right now within a dashboard, we have to hard code the red and the red, yellow, green striations. And with this dynamic gauge charts, we can basically pull those red, yellow, green lines. Really what you're pulling is a target, and then you can set the percentage thresholds that you want. But just to be able to pull that in from another object in Salesforce is pretty exciting. So you could create a target custom object, store all of the targets for all of your salespeople, let's say, and then using the gas gauges reference that. So these are two features that I thought to show, but just mentioning that there are features that you may want to turn on. A few that surprised me, there's a feature called historical trending. And when I show this with people, they're like, is that new in Salesforce? And the truth is it's been in Salesforce for probably a decade. Another thing that's kind of buried is report types. And this is probably the number one thing that if you don't know custom report types, you're really, really limited in what you can do reporting wise. There's so much in here. These are the kinds of things within the dashboard dojo that we sort of dig in and chew on and talk about and think about the impact of. So there are a bunch of features in here. With historical trending, it's just a checkbox to turn it on. So you can see here when I, again, under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, if I go to historical trending, it's available on 3 standard objects and up to 3 custom objects. So for opportunities, literally it's a checkbox to turn this on, and you click save, and then a new report type is available with the ability to do comparisons 1 week ago versus today, 1 month ago versus today in your reporting. It's really quite powerful. So we talked about permissions. We talked about settings a little bit. Why don't we jump to the front end of the system? And, I think if we were to, let's do the inline editing of reports first. For years, we've had inline editing and multi-line editing of list views. So I think so if I'm looking at a list view on the account object or the opportunity object, I can, for example, I can do not only inline editing, but I can do multi-line editing if I wanted to, for some reason, if these all had the same phone number. This is a terrible example, but so I can do multi-line editing within a list view. So I can do single row editing. I can do multi-line editing within a list view. Well, within reports, it actually works a little bit different. So I'm not going to save that change there. But on a report, if I were to go run a report, and this one has cases by origin and priority. So in the system, there are 1,600 cases. And if I were to show the detail rows, because inline editing is turned on, any of the columns that are supported, so specific data types within Salesforce, when I hover over them, you see the pencil appear within the report. The key thing to know about inline editing of reports is that this is not a multi-line editor. I think a lot of people, and maybe David too, I don't know if you thought this, like when Salesforce came out with this, that this would be a multi-line editing tool. It's really not. It's a single record. In fact, at the moment, it's a single field on a single record. So if I click on this, unlike the page layout on cases, let's say I were to go inline edit a field on cases, I would have a whole screen with all the fields that I could inline edit. Here, I can just do the one field. So if I called this cases about digital media and, how do you spell pepperoni?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Pepperoni, okay? So this is a terrible example, but we're having fun. So you see that I just made an inline edit. One quirky thing in these dev orgs is even though I made the change, I got the prompt that said the change was made, I actually need to refresh in order to see the change. So what I noticed recently, I had a real world example where I had to look and fix data in my own org going back 3 years, looking for opportunities and just reclassifying them slightly because of just some business decisions that were made about whatever that category was. I created a row level formula highlighting any of the thousands of opportunities that might meet that criteria. And then I just scrolled through them. I sorted by that row level formula and I isolated the 100 or so that I needed to possibly make a change to. And I just looked at them and went through one by one. Now in my production instance, when I made that change, it actually reloaded the page for me, which was fantastic. So when I click save in production, it actually reloads the page and you can see the change. For some reason in these dev orgs, in order to see the change, you have to do the refresh. But that was such a welcome surprise in my production org that I could, I could just kind of keep moving because it kept reloading on its own when I made the change. Now, what's coming on the roadmap, I think when this goes GA, they're going to add one extra cool thing, which is any of the columns. So you can see there really aren't many columns on this report. It looks like account name and subject could be inline edited. You see when the pencil appears as opposed to the lock. So what's coming in one of the, it could be the next release or the one after, what's coming is when you click on the pencil that you would see all the fields that are editable depending on the columns you have on your report. So kind of an exciting thing to be able to do more than one field within one record at a time. But for that example that I had a couple weeks ago, needing to go through 3 years of opportunities, inline editing combined with a row level formula to isolate which ones might be the ones needing fixing was fantastic. So it'd be interesting to hear. David, did you say you have you tinkered with this at all? Or is
I
this
have. I played around with this. I was initially a little surprised as well that when going ahead and saving the update and the page refreshes, or at least it looks like the page refreshes,
Yes.
the record actually did get changed, but the report does not reflect yet that change. To me, there was just a little bit of a disconnect. It needed to become more familiar with it. I figured it's in beta. I'm sure either a notification or something will come up saying, if you want to see that update, go ahead and hit refresh on the report itself. So I was a little surprised by that. And
Yes.
the bulk editing of records was also noticeable, that you can't change because let's say you're updating the industry for a bunch of accounts or job titles for a bunch of contacts. To be able to change many, I sort of just assumed that it would work like list views, but it does not.
Yeah, it's a different thing. However, it does work, and it. So inline editing of list views does not work when there are multiple
record types. Yes.
Yeah. And so
And
with
this
reporting,
does.
it does work. There is no issue, but again, it's only one field on one row at a time. So that's probably one reason. I think that there are a couple of other things that they'll clean up along the way. One early example of a mistake that I found was with the opportunity amount. And if an opportunity had products, it still looked like it let you make the change. And it would show you the green box that it saved the change. But in reality, it didn't save the change because the system prevents that. There must be some system level validation that says if an opportunity has products, kind of like on the opportunity itself, if it has products, the amount field becomes read only.
Yep.
And that's, I think, been true for all the years I've worked with Salesforce. So the amount field is now correctly locked, which is good. And I think that the other thing that they'll look to do is expand the data types that are available, that are supported.
Yeah.
So we can do dates, we can do pick list fields, and so on. So kind of an exciting thing. So that's the inline editing of reports. I've really, really been excited about that and looking forward to seeing it continue to evolve.
Yeah. Mitch asked, before you move on to the next one, Mitch asked a question. Let me throw it onto the screen over here.
Okay.
Basically, he says that what he's seeing is when you click on the pencil, it lets him type, but the blue save button is grayed out. So I'm wondering whether or not it might have something to do with record level security. Is that possible? I don't know. I haven't experienced this use case.
And my first question for Mitch, in the system that he's doing that, is he a sysadmin or not? If he's a sysadmin, then that's not a concern. And then I guess beyond that would be, is the data entered in a correctly formatted way? Like I don't have the opportunity to enter something incorrectly in here. So I do have the ability, you just wonder if it's the nature of the field. Something that it's expecting a certain type of data, and you may be in a situation where you can't even enter that data. So it'd be interesting to hear from Mitch, what object, what field, and then is he a sysadmin in that system or not?
Yeah. So he's saying he is a sysadmin, by the way. He just
okay. Oh, that's good to know. Okay, great. And Mitch, I wasn't accusing you of anything. It's more to just clarify with permissions, because there absolutely are field level security things that pop up depending on your profile. So then the other thing that I would look at is validation rules. I think early on the validation rules, they wouldn't apply until you click save. So I wouldn't think that would be injected that quickly,
right?
Because you can't even click save because it's grayed out. But Mitch, it sounds like we should have a phone call and dig into some of these topics together, which would be fun.
There we go.
All right. And Andrew helped me spell pepperoni. Thank you, Andrew. That's great. So for a vegan to be talking about pepperoni, that's great. Well, great. So let me show you the other beta feature that's gone live recently, which is the dynamic gauge charts. And I just created a very simple dashboard with, and it looks like I kept tinkering with this. So there's a little bit of junk on here, but basically, um, um, if you some of the differences. So on the left are regular dashboard gauges, and on the right, I'm using a dynamic gauge. And you think, wow, they look identical to each other. One little difference is that the footer, if you have a footer, the footer is whatever you type, versus on the new dynamic gauge, uh, it ignores your footer and just puts in some specified thing related to the target that you've provided. But when you go ahead and create these, I'll just edit this dashboard. Sorry, this is so ugly looking, but we tinker not to
It looks
impress.
better than what I see in a lot of production orgs, so you're good.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay, so there are 11 types of dashboard components, and that's been true for since we've come to Lightning, and they added Lightning tables. So there are the first 10 here. The bottom right one, Lightning tables, is super powerful, absolutely worthwhile getting to know. Very, very good choice. It does things that the other 10 can't do. Um, but if you pick the gas gauge one, which is what we're talking about now, the default is standard mode, but with the beta feature activated, we're given the dynamic mode choice. And if you choose dynamic, it basically says, hey, go pick something that's going to set the top the value that is going to be the top value. And so you can specify which object and which record. So this is for somebody named Julia Chavez, JC's current. So I have a record called JC's current quarter. I created a custom object called target. I created some columns, some fields. There's a record label, which is the name of the person and the quarter and their target. And then there's a field that's a currency, which is what this dashboard component is showing. So on that object, and I have the object available right here. So let me just close that for a sec. I'll open this in another browser window. But the target object, very, very simple. It's just a simple custom object that I created. And if we look at all the current quarter targets, I have a target name. And this is essentially the ID of the custom object. And then I have one more field, which is called target amount. So Eric has a $4 million target. Julia has a $2 million target. Oh, it looks like I've got JC's and Julie Chavez. So one has a 2, one has a 3. But if I were to change that, that would be dynamic. So let's come back in here and we'll just look at which record that I had selected. So I had selected JC's. And if I come back to this record and we were to change this to something noticeable, it would update. So let's do 2,450,000, some number like that. And if I update the target, so this is the dynamic nature of this. And if I were to come back and refresh the dashboard, so why don't I just close out of it and refresh it, we would see I should have picked a ridiculous number, but it looks like where it's put that is in between the yellow and the green. That's the target there, the 2.5, and then I've got sort of an odd split between the red and the yellow, and you set that right in this component. So if I scroll down here, it looks like I set it at 300. Now I see what I did. So this is kind of cool. So I put 100% of the target in between green and yellow, and some of you may say, wait a minute, that's not how we do it. We put 100% up at the top. So let's say that we do 66 and we put 100 here. So that'll now move my target from in between yellow and green. It'll move it out to the outer edge. And that's that 2.5 million. It looks like it rounded on me.
This is very cool.
Yeah. So I think, if you have 20 salespeople, and if you've ever managed multiple dashboards and had to manually every quarter update, a whole bunch of dashboards with a whole bunch of gas gauges, this is a really, really nice way to update it, manage it. And then instead of updating all the dashboards, you come in and you inline edit within a list view, and can just manage all of those dashboard targets there. So that's very specific to the gas gauge component. And you don't have to use that. You can still use the old way of hard coding a number and then hard coding essentially the numbers between red and yellow and green. So I'll jump back over to the other window, see if there are any comments.
Nope, nothing new.
Okay, it looks like Mitch is going to do some more research. Fantastic. Well, I think there's so many interesting ways to, different things to talk about within reports and dashboards. I really hope that everyone, I mentioned earlier, I hope that everyone in the Salesforce Ohana has the ability to subscribe to dashboards. I think that probably should have been given out on the standard user profile. Much like with subscribing to reports, it's such a powerful way to, essentially put report data and dashboard data in people's fingertips. Within the Dashboard Dojo recently, we did a separate show or separate episode or session, I guess we could say, we did a sparring session, maybe we should say that in the dojo. We just reviewed all of the 2021 new features, and another one that came out that's very simple. There's nothing to do to set it up. If you were to come in here and this is not a pretty dashboard either in this particular dev org, but just to show you, one of the new drop-down options is the ability to download. So nothing you need to do. We just need to teach our users to go do this, but go ahead and click download, and it has just downloaded a PDF of the dashboard. So I find that very helpful. Prior to that, we had the ability to, on any dashboard, click on that in the top right corner of all the components is this little expand window. And you can actually flip through, and I'm actually cycling through with my right arrow to flip through these. And if any of them I wanted to download, I have the little download link so I could download a single chart. Any of you that are involved in preparing board decks, if you have a set of specific things on different dashboards that you might want to include in a board deck or some other kind of kickoff, you can quickly download individual components as well. So David, had you played with that one before?
I have not downloaded to PDF, but drilling into a particular component and I'll call it paginating through. I've definitely played with that. I think it's fantastic. A lot of people often ask questions about exporting or downloading reports or dashboards from Salesforce.
Yeah.
And it always raises some alarm bells for me, especially if they are suggesting, because 99% of the time they are suggesting that they truly want to export the data so that they can manipulate it in Excel for some purpose. And we all know how dangerous that can be. But seeing the graphical summary of the data set that's represented either in a particular report as the graphical chart or the dashboard makes a ton of sense to include that in a PowerPoint, to use it for a particular meeting of some kind. I totally see the value in that. And to me, that needed to be made a little bit easier, because right now telling people to grab a screenshot doesn't really solve the issue.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. On the roadmap, there's some exciting things coming within reporting. So we didn't show one of those forward-looking statements, and I guess this isn't a Salesforce event anyway.
Right.
This is Brainy 8 event, but there are some exciting things coming. It's been really fun to get to know the report and dashboard team, the product team at Salesforce, and they're so passionate about solving challenges that we all have. One of the things that I think is coming is a reorganization of the report tab to surface more reports. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed. There should be some interesting stat out there, and I'm sure Salesforce knows this, that if your organization has 500 users, you might have 10,000 reports on the reports tab, and most of which you probably shouldn't see, and probably a tenth of which is probably useful to you in your job. I like to say that the person who should see the least is the person up at the top of the organization. So, your CEO, when she logs in, she does not need to see every report and dashboard in the system. And I'd argue she should probably just see the handful to help her do her job, right? So it's really almost like this wasteland. And We do have ways that we can manage this. So in Lightning, one of the nice things they gave us was nested folders, and we can dump things into folders, and we can use the security on the folders to control who has access to what. I think a lot of stuff just sits and rots on the reports tab. So I think that upgrade that's on the roadmap around reorienting the reports tab, I think will be really helpful. In the meantime, if you have a new head of sales come on board and she's in her first week and you've created some great reports for her, my strong suggestion would be, I guess we're all virtual these days, or some of us aren't. But if you're not virtual, maybe lean over the shoulder and just say, hey, here's a few that I've created for you. Let's go ahead and make them favorites for you. And if you're not familiar with that, it's just such a great. So if we look at that example, of course, I've got a very strange mix of reports on this in this particular org. But how about we go to open pipe by stage? And this is something that, all sales leaders are going to want to see, especially if they're new, like just what's open. So it's very, very easy to favorite. When you're looking at a report, you can click the star. Back on the reports tab, you could favorite something by going to the action menu over on the right, pulling down, and you can just favorite something. You can unfavorite from here as well. But now that report is favorited, so if I click away and then click down on the reports tab, the favorite is embedded within the reports tab. Also on the reports tab itself, we have a category for favorites. It's the same on dashboards as well. But just for the individual user to be able to get and find things. Favorites allows for favoriting just about anything. You can favorite list views, you can favorite folders, you can favorite apps, you can favorite leads and accounts and opportunities, reports, dashboards, so many different things. Each user can have a list of about 200. And sort of one other thing that's not as well known about this is when you're looking at your favorites, you can actually go in and relabel the favorites.
Yep.
So let's say that our new head of sales is Sally, and Sally, use this one.
Yep.
So, something like that. And you can relabel and then when
and
Sally,
you can resequence them too. You can reorder them.
resequence them. Yeah, that's such a good point. Just really nice way for an end user to find something to use something.
Great stuff. So Gene actually has a question before we officially move over into the Q&A segment. Gene has a question about seeing you set up a dashboard filter.
Absolutely. Yeah, Gene, we're going to do this. Okay, this is the 30-second filtering. So the filtering depends on what it is that you're looking at. It's a lot easier if it's like one object or related objects on that dashboard. So if I come in, I've got an example with filters already set up, but we'll go ahead and set up another one. So if you're not familiar with filters, you can have up to 3 filters per dashboard. I have accounts by industry, I've got pipe opportunity data, and I've got cases. So I could filter on account industry or account region here because that would be a common element across them. And it looks like I've done region, and so there's a pick list in North America regions, one of the regions, and it just applies. It looks like I didn't set any data to North America, so bad example. But let's actually pick another one where I know there is data. So to add a filter, you just edit the dashboard, click on the add filter. You can have up to 3 of them. When you add a filter, you pick a field such as industry, and then you have a display name, and then you can add specific values. So I'm going to add agriculture as one. I'm going to add apparel as another. And then for banking, I'm going to do finance and banking. And we'll do insurance, and that's known as FBI. So you can even combine them. Probably the coolest thing I see with filters is doing with dates. So doing like open opportunities and having thresholds this month, this quarter, this year. But we've just done 3 values. You can have up to 50. So hopefully, Gene, this is quick. Hopefully you see how this is done. I'm going to just go ahead and refresh the dashboard, and we have, this is how quick it is to add a filter to your dashboard. It's a fantastic feature. And these filters filter each other. So if I did Europe, Middle East, and Africa agriculture, it's the intersection between the two.
Love it. We do have a question right now, which actually is not specific on reports. So before we switch over to that, let me ask, does anyone have any other questions associated with reports or dashboards for David? Okay, so if not, we're going to switch over into our last segment, our Q&A segment. Bear with me. Okay, so the first question that we have here, and we might need to jump back into the screen share for this, but here's the question. Anyway, it's from Tim, and Tim is asking, how do you change how notifications are displayed in Lightning? Remember once I was playing around and you saw that you can have modal or pop-up of the notification. I believe he might be talking about in-app guidance, but I'm not really sure. David, thoughts?
Well, so one would be validation rules and sort of where they appear in Lightning. So that's one type of notification. I have a feeling you're talking about something else, like an in-app guidance or something else, which I'm not as familiar with.
Yeah. So I am familiar with in-app guidance, and with in-app guidance, if I have time, I'll pull up my demo org to show. But when you're in-app guidance, that's where you can choose in what section of the screen you want that notification, if you want it to appear in a particular section, or if it should be like a docked notification that appears like from the bottom, like pops up. I often say it pops up like a piece of toast, or it appears in a particular section on the screen. Tim is saying the little bell at the top is the default. So you might be talking about, now that I think of it, Salesforce uses the term notification in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. So it could also be notification as in when someone mentions you in a chat or post. So using automation, for example, Flow or Process Builder, you could set up that, let's say, if an opportunity reaches a certain attributes are updated on the opportunity, to automatically not only post something to the chat or feed of that record, but to also mention a person or a group, which by default would set off the native notification that Salesforce has. Or alternatively, you can eliminate the chatter post entirely and simply set up automation so that it should trigger a notification, and a notification to whom, and that's where you can determine what should the message of that notification be. So that would be in Process Builder or in Flow, where you can do that. So Tim, hopefully that covered what you were looking for. If not, go ahead and clarify. I have one question that actually came into me before we actually went live, and that question is this. If you could give just one piece of advice for new Salesforce admins, what would it be?
I would say tinker, but not in production. So, absolutely one of my favorite things is the day that the pre-release orgs are released. I will sign up for a pre-release org and I'm just hunting for golden eggs. And what's so fun about that is they don't publish the documentation for a few days. So like for me with reports and dashboards, I'm looking for things, I'm trying things out. I'm looking to see, are there any beta features I can enable? What else looks different? And then try to figure it out. And it feels like a little bit like playing a video game. If you're newer and you're looking for some structured guidance, certainly Trailhead has a lot of good projects, specifically with reports and dashboards. There are quite a few projects. I was tinkering the other day and did a couple on like formulas and inline, or embedding reports. They're just some nice projects that you can do. There is a super badge on reports and dashboards as well. So if you're looking for a little structure in your play, but I do think it's really good to have at least a dev org or 50 set up with different things. It's funny, I sort of get mixed up between my dev orgs and have some things set up in some in another. But part of the reason that I speak at events is because it forces me to tinker and put presentations together, and that's really how I learn. So that's the learning experience for me, is going in and tinkering. So hopefully share the love of tinkering.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Playing around, getting hands-on with it, because as much as you might watch someone showing you how to do something, or you're reading from a blog article or reading on Trailhead how to do something, you learn it in an entirely different way when you go in and you start playing around and doing it. By the way, like many of us as admins, we see this ourselves when someone asks for certain fields to appear on a particular screen. Hey, admin, can you go ahead and create these like 5 different fields and put them on, let's say, the contact screen? And then you go ahead and you put it there, and then they realize, oh, that's a lot of data entry. Hello, isn't this what you asked for? But once they're actually playing around with it and they're actually using it and they see it on the screen, they start to realize, so it's that hands-on, that tangible experience that makes you think of the entire scenario with a different use case. And I think that helps from another perspective.
Another quick tip. So I had, a good chunk of my career before ever touching Salesforce, before ever seeing Salesforce. I probably first saw it in 2004. So I've been working on the platform for a long time. Still to this day, help is such a fantastic resource. So it was probably 5 or 6 years ago that I sort of raised the flag and said, okay, this platform is vast. You can't know all of it. However, you can know how to find information. And within help, I mean, Salesforce's doc team does a fantastic job every release of keeping the doc set up to date. And it's often these fine print things. So if you guys wonder where, ideas come from for the Dashboard Dojo and other things, I'm digging in and reading help documentation. And I don't say that that's the thing you should do, but you should trust it as a resource. If you're not sure, let's say you're setting up person accounts for the first time, and I'm sure people are sort of like, retching off to the side quietly, with that topic, because there are things that if you turn that on, there are other things you can't do, and you just want to know the fine print. The help documentation is such a good asset for that.
Absolutely. Lonnie's got a question on mentorship.
Yes,
she says the Salesforce mentor program says a mentee must be actively seeking a new job. I'm not looking for a new job yet. It seems like I'm not eligible for the program. Is that correct?
I really don't want that to be a requirement for the program. So I wonder if it's just, they're trying to help as many people land jobs within the community. But I would suggest go ahead and apply anyway, because there's such value. And even just in between, let's say you have the world's greatest job. Well, there's still a what's next. And the what's next could be to elevate your current position, expand within the role. I'm not at all suggesting you have to change companies to expand your role. But I would want you to be able to take advantage of the program. And at the same time, Lonnie, when the time's right, to become a mentor yourself. And please, everyone on this call, don't wait until you're 10, 20 years into your career to start mentoring. We should start mentoring. We should encourage people mid-20s, late 20s, early in their career to just take a stab at it. Salesforce's matching algorithm can try to do its best matching. And there are people every step of the way that need guidance. So.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is I'm not aware of this requirement, but if that's true, then I would simply explore a mentorship outside of this particular program. Unfortunately, I mean, if that's the obstacle that we're faced with.
I think another way to look at it is at some point you will be looking for a next step. And so everybody qualifies. I'm thinking about retirement, and I probably still qualify for a mentor because I need to figure out what to do in retirement other than, writing a book and hosting Dashboard Dojo and stuff like that.
There you go. We've got time for one more question, then we need to wrap it up. So Andrew's got more of a comment, it looks like, but let's address it anyway. I love filters, but I find they get confused sometimes and don't refresh properly.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about filters is if you click away and then click back and, essentially go away from the dashboard tab, come back, Salesforce remembers your filters on a particular dashboard. So whatever you left it as, it reloads that as the filters. So that's kind of an interesting thing, where I think sometimes there are issues when on a dashboard. So a single dashboard can have up to 20 components. And you can add a filter, and that filter may not apply to everything on the dashboard. And so sometimes the plumbing isn't right. depending on the contents of the filter and the contents of some of the components on the dashboard. But as far as other types of refresh issues, I haven't seen them. So I'm sorry to hear that you're bumping up against that, Andrew.
Yep. And it looks like that's about it as it relates to questions. So we're going to wrap it up. David, thank you so much for joining us this week. I appreciate it. I'm sure the audience appreciates it. You're always a valuable resource of knowledge and wisdom. And that's why you have such a big fan club. It's all good.
Oh, well, that's very, very kind of you. And for everyone, I'm so excited for each one of you to be building a career on this platform. What a fantastic thing. People can see an entire horizon of a career based off of really solid footing here. So I'm excited for each and every one of you for the opportunities that lie ahead.
You bet. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
Yep.